Our story begins. He is headed for the old fishing hole. Uh-oh. Too bad. Freddie had helped his mother make soft soap to sell to their friends and neighbors.
Shucks, if I didn't have to work. Think of all the fun I could be having. Gee.
Freddie tries to figure out an easier and quicker way to make soap. He goes to work to make his dreams of fun come true. After years of working night and day, Freddie's experiments bring success.
Soap in cakes.
Pretty soon, word gets around to the housewives who want shorter, easier wash days and cleaner clothes. Freddie's soap is just what they need. He invests his profits in larger quarters and new equipment to make enough soap to satisfy the demand. Finally, his dreams come true. Time off for fun on Saturday. Hey, Freddie, a guy can fish anytime.
At 23 skidoo.
Goodbye, Freddie.
Hopelessly in love, he wants to make good in a big way. So, back to work. As the company grows, it brings the railroad and other businesses to town. Increased property taxes from the thriving community help to build better schools, streets, parks, libraries, playgrounds, and waterworks. Taxes even help to provide more and better governmental services, such as police protection. Before long, Freddie becomes a successful businessman. And, incidentally, a successful husband and father. Fudsy's expanding company creates all kinds of jobs that never existed before. To increase production and sales, Fudsy builds up a strong labor management team. Each year, he invests a portion of his profits in research to develop better soap that can be made to sell at lower prices. The Fudsy company continues to grow with the years because it makes a good soap, which in competition with others sells at a fair price. Competition forces each manufacturer to improve his product, to sell it for less, and to give the consumer more for a dollar than his competitor. And Fudsy is hard to beat. Finally, he gets so many orders he realizes that one factory simply can't meet the demand. His profit motive starts sparking to figure out a way to increase production. He forms a corporation and issues stock to raise money to build factories from coast to coast. Fudsy's employees have faith in his management and back him with their savings. Banks loan depositors money to help finance the expansion program. Insurance companies loan the funds of their policyholders to help build the factories. Stock exchanges act as a clearinghouse for people from all walks of life to buy securities. Before long, everybody gets plenty of soap. At last, Fudsy's success is complete. Soap City. The profit motive, which drove Fudsy to accomplish so much, may bring out the evil as well as the good.
Hello? Fudsy, old boy, I've got a great idea. Between us, we control 70% of country's soap sales.
Yeah, but quiet. Let's see what's cooking.
I smell trouble. Let's raise and fix our prices. Controlling 70% of the market where we'll clean up.
Terrific. We'll make millions. Millions. Go.
Quiet. Okay, Sam. It's a deal.
You'll be sorry.
Fudsy and Sam Sudso raise and fix prices, but the result is not what they expect. A competitor comes along with a good bar of soap that sells at a lower price. Since shoppers always seek maximum value, only the lower priced soap sells, while Fudsy and Sam Sudso's profits turn into losses. 99 times out of 100, competition works. When it doesn't, the government steps in to prevent monopolistic attempts.
That was a tough break. Now the next time...
Only a business operating at a steady profit can give its workers security and employee benefits. Operating at a profit, a business can provide the employee with comfortable, colorful working conditions, high wages and steady employment, first aid and health protection, accident and life insurance, time off for vacations. The employee working for a profitable business can maintain a savings account, own his own home, and have plenty of leisure to enjoy the peace and quiet of family life. When investors receive fair dividends, they are eager to supply industry with a steady flow of capital to create new tools and plants, which in turn create new jobs. With business prosperous and employment high, the farmer has a ready and profitable market for the sale of his produce. When businesses all over the country operate at a steady profit, our economic health is tops. Billions in taxes paid out of profits flow into local, state, and governments. The profit motive has been the driving force back of the growth of American industry. The American system of free enterprise will give the young people of today the freedom of opportunity to develop ideas which will make a better way of life for the children of tomorrow.
invited to attend
Please, thank you for this unsolicited testimonial. And now, by special permission of the Commander-in-Chief, me, here is Mars' first space explorer, Colonel Cosmic.
I can't tell you how happy I am to see your smiling faces once more. First, let me say that this trip was made possible only by our dauntless chief, Og the Magnificent, introducer of Og Power, which runs most of our industry, and inventor of Og Speed, which doubles the original Og Power. A short time ago, the master was having trouble with the state limousine. He had, of course, developed the explosive charge. But it was inclined to get a little out of hand, just slightly. And of course, there was always the problem of friction. Parts rubbing together, heating up, and causing all sorts of trouble. But our leader was undaunted. He immediately ordered our first expedition into space to bring back the secret of how other planets got their state limousines to run smoothly. The target was picked with painstaking scientific accuracy. Destination Earth. You all know with what eagerness I volunteered for the mission, and with what confidence I took off. I took careful bearings and set out for my goal. It seemed no time till I was approaching a country of Earth called, the United States of America. I set her down like a feather. What's all the racket? Naturally, I protected government property by making the saucer invisible. They're after the chickens, Ma! And though the natives showed great interest in me, I decided to make myself invisible, too. Seeing moving lights in the distance, I headed for them. What phenomenal luck! I had landed close to what seemed to be an endless procession of state limousines. They moved quickly, and yet with fantastic smoothness. I just had to get a closer look at one of those Earthmobiles. Just as I thought. Not only smooth and efficient, but powerful as well. I watched them for hours. Great Ganymede, they were superb. I just couldn't help comparing them with ours, if you call that a comparison. Surely these vehicles must be the property of the highest officials. I was wrong. It seems that almost everybody in this country has one of those, they call them automobiles. They use them for transportation, for business, for pleasure. They use them for all sorts of things. I found that these vehicles gather at places called service stations, where they are fed, lubricated, that's how they beat friction, and given the finest care. The source of their nourishment was something called petroleum. A power source like that must be a highly prized state secret. I had to find out about it. Perhaps the secret lay within this government archives building. It was heavily guarded, but casting discretion to the winds, I walked boldly inside. Their code was remarkably easy to break. They merely substituted the word oil for petroleum. And I soon got hold of a veritable mine of classified information. I began to assimilate the material. I soon found out that though petroleum products are easily found anywhere, petroleum itself is a very elusive substance. Experts have to search for it constantly in all the most likely and unlikely places with all kinds of scientific devices. When they figure they found a good spot, they drill a hole in the ground called an oil well, for almost all oil lies far beneath the surface of the earth. These wells go down thousands of feet and cost a lot of money to drill. But that's no guarantee that they're going to find oil. Matter of fact, in exploratory drilling, only 1 well in 9 finds any oil at all. Only 1 in 44 recovers enough oil to pay for itself. And only 1 in almost 1,000 makes a major discovery. Pretty big odds. Yet America's proved reserves, the oil supplies still underground, have kept increasing steadily. I couldn't imagine how this ever-increasing supply of oil was achieved until I found out that there's not just 1, but thousands of oil companies, all competing with each other to discover and develop new sources of oil. For believe it or not, in the USA, anyone who is willing to risk it can drill for oil. But oil discovery is only part of the story. Once they get oil out of the ground, it has to be moved through pipelines, on ships, or in tank cars, to fantastic processing plants called refineries. Crude oil goes in, and great Jupiter, the things that come out. Gasoline, for example, the most efficient mobile power source on Earth. That was the stuff that powered all those cars and trucks. And asphalt, which makes smooth, durable roads. It seems that oil not only runs cars, it even gives them something to run on. Another oil product is the diesel fuel, which runs giant trains across the nation. In winter, fuel oil made from petroleum brings warmth and comfort to millions of homes. And still other fuels help defend America's shores and skies. From refineries also come the lubricating oils and greases that keep the wheels turning in America. But that still isn't all. Crude oil, like everything else, is made up of billions of tiny molecules. And using the magic of research, oil companies compete with each other in taking the petroleum molecule apart and rearranging it into, well, you name it, fabrics, toothbrushes, tires, insecticides, cosmetics, weed killers, a whole galaxy of things to make a better life on Earth. And you know, it isn't just oil companies that try to outdo each other, competing for the customer's dollar. The same story is true of almost every successful business enterprise in America. The result? A higher standard of living in the USA than in any other country on the whole planet. At last, the secret was mine. And now, to get proof of my discovery, smuggled past the border guards. In spite of my infinite precautions, one of them became suspicious and gave the alarm.
Come back for the eggs, did you?
Yeah.
And so, with the fond farewells of the natives ringing in my ears, I took off once again for Mars. My landing was a little bumpy, but I saved my precious cargo. Yes, I brought the secrets back with me, and here they are. The big secret is, of course, oil, which has brought a better life to all the people in the USA. But the key to making oil work for everybody is competition. Fellow Martians, I thank you.
Very interesting, Colonel. Oil, huh? Sounds splendid. But that, what was it? Competition. Not our kind of thing at all. Why, competition is downright unmarked.
You'll have oil for everybody. That's what we need. Oh, boy, oil.
You know what this means, Cosmic?
You bet I do, Og. It means that you're through. So why don't you get lost? Yes, the real secret is not only a great source of energy, but also the freedom to make it work for everybody. And if you have both of these things, any goal is possible. It's Destination Unlimited.
It wasn't so long ago in the history of man's voyage toward a better world that ships were carrying eager passengers toward the shores of a new nation that was just in the building. Our forefathers were constructing the foundation of this nation by interlocking inseparably the blocks of our political and economic freedoms. The way of life our forefathers established on this foundation of freedoms drew people from the far corners of the earth, and all those who set foot on these shores had the opportunity to build a better life for themselves. Even young Jonathan, an unskilled lad from across the sea, hoped to find a job where he could progress according to his ability and enterprise. As the years passed, Jonathan's earnings increased. But he still felt that for a man of his skill, it was about time for another raise.
Mr. Blessgravy, am I not the best crown rounder and brim trimmer in ye business? Then verily, methinks I am worth more moolah.
That you are, Jonathan. I'm sorry, lad.
No raise, Mr. Blessgravy? I quit. Sales and profits down. Phooey, I could run ye business better myself. Hey, why not? My own business. All you need's a little capital, a little push, and an idea. Yeah, an idea. Let's see.
So I said to him, I wouldn't wear that hat to a dog fight. Why, there isn't a decent hat in the entire village. And such prices. Imagine paying that much for a poke bonnet. Why, it was an awful thing.
Why not? Women's hats! My own business!
Fortunately, Jonathan was thrifty enough to keep a little nest egg for such an emergency.
Well, the cost of the building took care of the nest egg. And there was nothing left to pay for the necessary tools and equipment. But happily, Jonathan had a good reputation, and as his idea promised a profit, his friends and neighbors were willing to invest some of their savings in his new business. In the nick of time, an enterprising chap showed up with the raw materials to make hats. And before long, Jonathan was open for business. First, he had to advertise.
Shop at Bonton, it's the spot. 12 new hat styles, that's a lot. Ladies, get that new hat drill. 30 days to pay your bill.
As an expert salesman, Jonathan demonstrated the superior style and quality of his product. He set a price for his creations that the consumer was willing to pay, and sales dollars poured in from satisfied customers. Jonathan had big dreams of the wonderful rewards of being in business for himself. But before he could buy what he wanted, his employees' wages had to be paid. He had to pay taxes. And his friends who helped finance the business had to be paid a return on their investment. When all of his bills were paid, Jonathan had to exchange his big dream for a little dream.
Mesdames, mademoiselles, it is the privilege of Alphonse, hat stylist to all the grand heads of Europe, to bring you hats with style so chic, a quality magnifique, and a price, ooh la la, so low. Come one, come all to the grand opening.
To meet competition, Jonathan had to plow part of his profits back into the business to develop a better hat. If customers approved the quality, style, and price of Jonathan's new designs, he still could make his dreams come true. With the passing years, this strong foundation of freedoms protected the dignity of the individual and his family, gave everyone the right to worship as he pleased, and promised anyone with ability and enterprise the opportunity to participate in the building of the American way of life as we know it today. A way of life that depends upon millions of thrifty Americans who send a portion of their savings to work in our business system each year. People from all walks of life, workers, farmers, housewives, all of us send our dollars to work in our business system in the hope of earning dividends or interest on our investments. Anyone who has an insurance policy, a bank deposit, or a share of stock is helping to finance our business system. A constant stream of savings dollars must flow into big and small business each year. These dollars help to buy the land, the buildings, the tools and equipment, and create new job opportunities for our expanding population. The goods we produce are distributed to main streets all over the country. While the Main Street of today doesn't look much like the Main Street of Jonathan's time, the principles of our business system remain the same, for businessmen still compete with one another for the consumer's supply of spendable dollars. And Mrs. Consumer is still mighty critical of everything she buys.
Uh-oh, competition. The management of every business has a continuing problem: to improve their product to stay ahead of competition, or else.
Okay, men, this is it. Quick Chill's got the ball. We've got to get it back. Give them that new product play. More style, better quality, new features, and at the right price. Hit the line, men. Let's go.
Micrometer, wrench, file, caliper, slide rule. In addition to creating a better product, management develops new tools and more efficient methods to help workers turn out more boxes to sell at a price Mrs. Consumer will pay. The new features about this better product are advertised to point out its competitive advantages.
The Auto Magic Perma-Freeze, with plenty of room for groceries galore. The Auto Magic Perma-Freeze, with the super-duper store-o-matic door. Just press the button for your ice, a feature that is new, and extra space all over the place for other items too. In the Auto Magic Perma-Freeze, so see your dealer right away. Get a Perma-Freeze today.
Ah, yes, dear lady. Perma-Freeze is your kind of refrigerator. High quality at a low price.
Sales dollars from satisfied customers once again flow back to Perma-Freeze. A successful business must have enough sales dollars coming in to enable management to pay the expenses of doing business, such as salaries and wages, materials and supplies, research and product development, plant maintenance and repair. In addition to all of these bills, management has to pay taxes to local, state, and federal governments. Any money that's left over is known as profit. Wise management plows part of it back into the business. The remainder of the profit is paid out as dividends. These dividends are sent back to investors as a reward for risking their savings in the American business system. Although occasionally some of us pick a lemon and have to take a loss.
The constant investment of our savings through good times and bad has enabled our competitive business system to continue to increase the production of more and better goods to meet the demands of our rising population for a better standard of living. For example, it was only a little more than half a century ago that the average worker had only inefficient tools to help him turn out a product. Low production meant low wages. In 1900, many men had to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, to earn enough money to provide their families with the bare essentials. Hand labor was the rule in the home as well as the factory. In many families, the youngsters had to work to add their earnings to the family budget and forego the opportunity to get an education. And with most families in those days, the standard of living left much to be desired. A half-century later, we had invested enough in our business system to provide the average worker with efficient and expensive buildings and machinery to enable him to produce enough in a 40-hour week to earn twice as much as the 1900 worker earned in a 60-hour week. This shorter work week gives us all more leisure time to enjoy a standard of living beyond the wildest dreams of anyone who lived a half-century ago. The more we earn, the more our families have to spend for the things they need and want. Young people today have leisure time for fun and enjoy educational opportunities denied their fathers and grandfathers. And fortunately,
we have been able to raise our standard of living without sacrificing the spiritual side of life, which means so much to the American family. Our business system has continued to provide a better life for our increasing population, in spite of destructive forces which have pounded against our foundation of freedoms with no avail. However, wars, or the threat of wars, interrupt the normal operations of our competitive business system and may result in government controls which crack essential blocks in our foundation of freedoms. In World War II, wages were controlled. Many workers were frozen to their jobs. Farm prices were controlled, and profits of business were limited. Raw materials were allocated between essential and non-essential business. On Main Street, USA, many of us found less to buy because a good portion of our productive capacity went to the war effort. Prices were fixed, and the available supply of goods was rationed. In war emergencies, we allow government to restrict certain of our freedoms. But we Americans have learned to remove government controls as quickly as possible and to repair the blocks in the foundation of our freedoms to allow our business system to resume its normal operations. While we invest part of our savings to help finance the world's most efficient business system, at the same time we pay taxes to government to finance many kinds of services which also contribute to our way of life. For example, our taxes must provide the necessary funds to improve and expand our school system. Our taxes must be sufficient to pay for city streets, health, fire, and police protection, and of course, aid to the needy. Our state taxes help pay for highways, educational institutions, and among other things, help to finance important experiments to increase the productivity of our farms. Our federal taxes pay for irrigation and reclamation projects, for national parks, postal services, the Weather Bureau, and many other services. Our taxes have to pay for the enormous cost of past wars and provide the funds for a defense program which will ensure the safety of our country. In addition, all of us should be willing to pay whatever taxes are necessary to enable efficient government to improve or expand any essential service. But with our present tax load, we should avoid pressuring government for any new services that aren't absolutely necessary. Because we all know the more our government provides, the more taxes it's forced to collect. None of us can escape. Big business, small business, farmers, workers, housewives, and all of us have to pay our share. Demanding more and more from government could create a tax burden heavy enough to crack essential blocks in the foundation of our business system. Therefore, we shouldn't let our taxes reach a point where they destroy our ability to save and invest. For as we have seen, our rising standard of living depends upon a constant flow of savings dollars into our business system each year.
In the future of our country, waves of destructive forces will continue to batter against our foundation. When any force weakens the interlocked blocks of our political and economic freedoms,
As good citizens, we must be quick to use the tools our Constitution gives us and repair any cracks that may appear. As long as we keep the foundation of our business system strong, we shall be able to maintain and improve the way of life our forefathers conceived and established. A way of life which gave everyone who came to this country the chance to progress according to his ability and enterprise. Like the youth of yesterday, the young people of today deserve the same opportunity to earn success and accomplishment. And on this foundation of freedoms, continue to build a better life for themselves and their fellow man in the world of tomorrow.
America is many things to many people. To a 17-year-old kid, it's the malt shop on the corner. To Grandpa, it's the front porch in the cool of the evening. To Mother and her family, it's church on Sunday morning. And to Dad, it's his favorite relaxation. It's the Cracker Barrel philosophers in Crabtree Corners. And it's the tycoons in Wall Street. It's all races, creeds, and religions. It's freedom to work at the job you like. Freedom of speech and to peaceably assemble. Freedom to own property. Security from unlawful search or seizure.
Where's your warrant, Flatfoot?
The right to a speedy and public trial. Protection against cruel punishments and excessive fines. The right to vote. And to worship God in your own way. It is these freedoms that have made America strong.
Okay, so we got our freedom. But management's lousing up everything.
Labor is at fault. It's ruining the country.
My constituents, as your elected representative, I can assure you Labor's right. Management's right. I'm strictly neutral.
Labor, management, politicians, phooey. They can't tell corn from oats.
Wait, only taking money out of my pocket.
Hurry, step right up, folks. Here's the answer to your problems. Dr. Utopia's sensational new discovery, ism. Ism will cure any ailment of the body politic. It's terrific. It's tremendous. Once you swallow the contents of this bottle, you'll have the bountiful benefit of higher wages, shorter hours, and security. Enormous profits, no strikes. Remember, you're the big boss. Government control, no worry about votes. Name your own salary. Bigger crops, lower cost. Why, ism even makes the weather perfect every day. And now then, because we are introducing this amazing item for the first time in this country, it isn't going to cost you 1 cent. All you have to do is sign this little scrap of paper, and you get your bottle absolutely free.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom and the freedom of my children and my children's children, in return for which said ISM promises to take care of me forever.
Get out of the way.
Pardon me. And who are you, my good man?
I'm John Q. Public.
Ah, my fine friend, you're just in time to share this generous and gigantic offer. Sign right here.
Mind if I read it first?
Hurry up,
Keep your shirts on, boys.
Including my freedom
Freedom? What? Sign away my freedom? Why, this is ridiculous.
Don't be corny, brother.
Sure, our system of free enterprise isn't perfect. But before we throw it away for some imported double talk, let's turn the clock back a few years to see what it's done for us. For example, back in the 1890s, Joe Dokes was just a guy who liked to tinker around his barn. Some people thought Joe was lazy. Some even thought he was nuts. But one day, he had an idea. And because he was free to dream his dream and tinker, Joe had a chance to make something of himself and his idea. So, of course, some people didn't think so much of Joe's idea. But that didn't stop him. So Joe got some money from young Aunt Minnie and Uncle Angus and Grandpappy and Mr. Titus. When Joe's friends and relatives used their savings to help him buy tools and property, they were capitalists. Don't blush, folks. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Now, naturally, Joe needed some help. So he hired Willie Lumpkin, who was out of work anyway, and before long, Willie had the know-how and became skilled labor. Because capital, management, and labor worked together, Joe's idea grew. It grew and did things even he never dreamed of. Today, the automobile industry provides millions of jobs that never existed before. And remember, this is a story of only one industry. There are thousands more scattered all over the United States whose history of development is pretty much the same. We've built a country under the American system that sends more young people to high school and college than all the rest of the world combined. Why, even in the Depression, our wages bought more food, clothing, travel, and entertainment than the wages of any other people in the world. Our country has a national income equal to the total national incomes of any other 6 nations in the world. With only 7% of the Earth's people, we drive 70% of the world's automobiles. That's just a sample of the things the capitalistic system has given us in only 160 years. Before signing up, you boys ought to try a little taste of Dr. Ism's formula to see what you'd get in exchange for your freedom. Go ahead, try it.
You can't do this to me! I'll strike!
The state forbids strikes.
Wait till the union hears about this!
Ah, yes, the union. Welcome to our ranks, number 1313.
I'll take this case to the Supreme Court.
The state is the Supreme Court. Our decision is as follows. No more private property. No more you.
The farm vote will put a stop to this.
Farmers don't vote anymore.
What'll I do for seed next year?
You won't have to worry about next year. The state will do your planning from now on.
We must fight to regain our freedom, or everything is lost. Everything!
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
When anybody preaches disunity, tries to pit one of us against the other through class warfare, race hatred, or religious intolerance, you know that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives. And we know what to do about it.
Now, gentlemen, no violence, please. Don't throw those bottles. Don't throw those bottles! No! Oh, no! No!
Working together to produce an ever greater abundance of material and spiritual values for all. That is the secret of American prosperity. Age was born. There is no denying that since that moment the shadow of the atom bomb has been across all our lives. All men of goodwill earnestly hope that a realistic control of atomic weapons can and will be achieved. Meanwhile, good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force. Because here, in fact, is the answer to a dream as old as man himself. A giant of limitless power at man's command. And where was it science found that giant? In the atom, a particle so infinitely small that it takes over 100 billion atoms to make up the head of a pin. Just as other millions and quadrillions of atoms are the tiny building blocks which make up everything in the world. Ships, and shoes, and sealing wax, and cabbages and kings. Although no one has ever seen an atom, scientists have learned a great deal about how they behave, and there are widely accepted theories as to what they're like. Let's start by meeting a leading authority on the subject, Dr. Atom. Now, observing the professor himself, we can see that his structure resembles, in many ways, something almost as vast as the atom is small. The solar system. And there are certain similarities. Here is the center with electrons in surrounding orbits. But whereas the planet's movement of electrons is slightly different, there are other differences, too. Hey, hold it! Thank you. Now, the solar system together is electrical. The electrons, which are negative, are attracted by the protons, which are positive, and vice versa. But here in the nucleus are other particles with no electrical charge, called neutrons. Very important characters, too, as we shall see. And equally important when it comes to atomic energy is what scientists call the atom's binding force. It's a kind of cosmic glue holding the nucleus together. This, then, is a single atom, but certainly not all atoms are alike. There are, in nature, more than 90 basic elements, which is science's term for families of atoms. To scientists, the atoms of the individual atom families, or elements, are identified by number. That is, the number of protons or positive charges in their nucleus. And they vary all the way from hydrogen, which has just 1 proton, to oxygen with 8 protons, to gold, he's rich with 79, finally on to the heaviest of all natural elements, uranium with 92 protons. Now, within each element, or family of atoms, there can be different members, each one having the same number of protons, but differing in the number of neutrons. The total of an atom's protons and neutrons is its atomic weight. Thus, in natural uranium, we have U-234, U-235, and U-238. These different members of the same element or atom family, science calls isotopes. Some elements, tin for instance, have a great many isotopes. Others, like aluminum, are lone wolves with just 1. Now, most atoms of most elements are content with their lot in life. We speak of them as being stable, but others are busy day and night, being what science calls radioactive. Like radium, throwing off powerful rays along with some of its neutrons and protons, until it actually alters its own nuclear structure and changes to another family, and then to another, until it does become stable at last. This spontaneous changing of elements is called natural transmutation. Its discovery gave men of science an idea. If an atom could change itself, why couldn't man change an atom? Using as bullets the very particles which radium threw off, a noted British scientist bombarded nitrogen and converted it to oxygen. In terms of individual atoms, this is what happened. The radium nucleus threw off an alpha particle consisting of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. One of the protons was absorbed into the nitrogen nucleus, turning it to oxygen. This was artificial transmutation, man changing the elements. From that first experiment, others by the thousands followed as scientists devised ever more powerful particle accelerators, commonly called atom smashers, to transmute more and more kinds of atoms. All scientifically important, but hardly world-shaking. Then, in 1939, some scientists were experimenting with transmutation of uranium. What would happen, they wondered, if they fired a neutron at a uranium nucleus, already the heaviest in nature? Why not try? So they tried. And the result? Nuclear fission. Instead of a minor change, the atom split in 2. Truly a discovery to change the world. For what had happened when the uranium atom split was a kind of double miracle of science. Half of the miracle concerned that binding force we spoke of before, that kind of cosmic glue which holds the atom's nucleus together. We still don't know all about that binding force yet, but we do know it is equivalent to mass. Therefore, we may speak of it as having a kind of weight of its own. Now, the 2 atoms into which a uranium atom splits also have binding force. But for some reason, it takes less of that glue to hold them together, and in the process of fission, a tiny fraction is left over. What happens to it? It explodes as energy, proving Einstein's theory that mass and energy are really the same. But we spoke of a double miracle. To understand the second one, let's slow down that fission 1 million or so times. A single particle starts the reaction, splitting the uranium atom. Here now is the release of energy as heat and blast. Here are powerful rays being given off, similar to X-rays. But here are free neutrons driven out with tremendous speed. And provided there is sufficient U-235 present, what science calls a critical mass, those neutrons bombard other uranium atoms, causing them to split and split still others. The result? A chain reaction. Over 1 million billion atoms exploding within 2 seconds. And the force? It would take Yankee Stadium full of dynamite to equal the energy released in the complete fission of an amount of U-235 the size of a baseball. With this discovery, at the time the free world faced a war for survival, it was little wonder the first thought was a weapon. But how to obtain enough material for even a single bomb? Only a small fraction of natural uranium is the U-235 isotope, which will fission in a chain reaction. And to separate enough U-235 quickly enough seemed all but impossible. But the impossible became reality as industry, labor, science, and the military combined their efforts to build Oak Ridge, where enough U-235 was separated to build the first atomic bomb. At Hanford, Washington, another impossible project proved possible when a huge plant was built for the mass production of the artificial element plutonium. This process involves what may be called the furnace of atomic energy, the reactor pile. Here is a structure or pile of graphite blocks. In the reactor are placed rods of natural uranium containing both U-235 and U-238. As U-235 begins to fission, the graphite slows down the free neutrons, and some of them hit other U-235 atoms, keeping the chain reaction going. But others of those slowed down neutrons hit U-238 atoms. And here's what happens. Remember, we said that U-238 wouldn't support a chain reaction. However, it will capture neutrons from U-235 fission and start a process which converts the U-238, first to neptunium, then to plutonium. And plutonium will fission in chain reaction. Thus, the reactor itself is a source of atomic fuel. Besides producing plutonium, the nuclear reactor makes possible two very important peacetime uses of atomic energy. Remember that the chain reaction process in the reactor creates tremendous heat, which scientists have learned how to control. Thus, a reactor may be substituted in many industrial applications where heat is now provided by coal or petroleum. But such uses in the foreseeable future are limited. For one thing, a reactor pile must be shielded to protect the workers around it from dangerous radiation, and this shielding adds tremendous weight.
However, an atomic energy power plant has already proved feasible. The future supplying of electric power to entire cities is far from impossible, while nuclear power in locomotives, submarines, ships, and even very large airplanes may all but revolutionize future transportation on land, sea, and air.
But perhaps the most valuable byproduct of the nation's reactor piles is radioactive isotopes. Research has revealed that many elements not naturally radioactive became so when placed in a nuclear reactor. And these isotopes, working as tracers with such measuring devices as a Geiger counter, became invisible detectives, aiding the cause of science in many different fields. In agriculture, isotopes are now used to test such things as the effect of fertilizers on plant growth and the proper timing for their use, helping to assure bigger and better yields from tomorrow's farms. In industry, isotopes have found literally hundreds of new uses, such as the automatic thickness control of sheet aluminum, saving hundreds of man-hours of labor and assuring accuracy never before possible. In the fields of medicine and biochemistry, isotopes are performing near miracles of diagnosis and discovery. With radioactive sodium, doctors are solving more of the seeming mysteries of heart disease and circulatory disturbances. Radioactive phosphorus has been used to locate tumors in the brain and greatly simplify operations for their removal. Iodine-131 finds one of many uses in revealing conditions of the thyroid, and there are many more. New ways of using isotopes are being discovered constantly through the tireless work of modern pioneers in such fields as chemistry, metallurgy, medicine, and biology. Truly, the superpower which man has released from within the atom's heart is not one, but many giants. One is the warrior, the destroyer. Another is the engineer, seeking to provide vast quantities of energy to run the world's machines. Another is the farmer, helping to better feed tomorrow's world. Still another is the healer, helping to diagnose and cure the sick. And the last is the research worker, working on in the fields of pure science to reveal more of the mysteries of the universe. But all are within man's power, subject to his command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children in the new world of the atomic age. In a typical city or town, on a typical residential street, we find a typical home occupied by a typical American family. Like millions of his fellow Americans, John Q. Public earns enough money to keep up the payments on a new car. He takes great pride in owning a fine, new, long-term mortgaged home that was built to last a lifetime. Mrs. John Q. Public no longer finds housework fatiguing drudgery, thanks to a host of labor-saving devices, including her husband. Mr. John Q., because of a 40-hour week, has the leisure to dream about his favorite sport.
Darling!
Oftentimes, in a secluded corner of his private den, John Q. reflects on some of the better things he has done with his life. Insurance to protect his family if he is called before his time. Money in a savings account for emergencies, for summer vacations, and to help put John Q. Jr. through college. In spite of the high cost of being a husband and father, John Q. has a private little nest egg. His practical nature tells him it ought to do more than collect moths.
Let's see, where did I put this thing? I know it's... common stock. Do I own any? I don't even know what they are.
In that case, it might be a good idea to get a little information with a fellow who owns and operates a company that makes and sells oil drums. Each year, customers buy more and more from our because he makes a better oil drum than his competitors. One day, customers demand more oil drums than the owner can produce. He figures it will take about $3 million to do the job. So he decides to form a corporation to sell shares in his business to raise the capital he needs. First, the owner goes to the state government to get a corporation charter and permit to sell shares in this business. Next, our friend goes to an investment banker and shows him the record of the oil drum manufacturing company's past performance and plans for expansion. The investment banker decides to help our friend sell shares in the corporation to raise the $3 million. However, before any shares in the corporation can be sold, certain information must be filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington. The investment banker and the owner must swear that the information they file contains nothing but the truth. Registration with the SEC does not imply that the government approves the stock issue as a good investment, but only assures the public the material statements about the stock issue are false. Punishment will be according to the law. After SEC registration is effective, the investment banker pays the owner $3 million in exchange for a certain number of shares in the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. The investment banker sells shares of the common stock to people at a price of $3 million investment and shows a profit for his services in selling the stock. Money received from the sale of shares in the business builds a new and better plant, which produces more and better oil drums. The people who bought common stock own proportionate shares in the corporation, tools, equipment, and all of its assets. Common stockholders elect the directors of the corporation. Directors represent the stock and are responsible for the way the business is run. Directors determine the amount of dividends, if any, to be paid out of earnings to the stockholders. Naturally, when stockholders invest in a business, they hope to receive dividends to help pay for necessities of life. Within a few short years, an increasing demand for the company's product poses friends. How can he fill all the orders? He will have to build more plants and buy more tools to increase production of oil drums. It will take about $20 million to do the job. One way to get this additional capital is to sell more stock to many more people. So the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation votes to send its president to the New York Stock Exchange to see if their common stock can qualify for listing. The corporation wants to list its securities on the exchange so that the additional stock they need to sell will be more attractive to investors all over the nation. Securities listed on the New York Stock Exchange can be sold for cash any time in this national marketplace.
Each year inquire about listing their securities, but only those which can pass a thorough examination as to their financial health are accepted.
Calling the president of the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. Calling the president of the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation. Report to examination room B. Attention all members of the stock list department. Report to examination room B.
The Stock List Department examines the qualifications of corporations to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The corporation must have substantial assets in plants, tools, equipment, and cash. There must be a broad distribution of its shares among a large number of stockholders. The corporation must show successful management and sales records and annual net earnings at the time of listing of at least $1 million. The proposed stock issue must meet federal, state, and New York Stock Exchange regulations. The corporation must agree to report to its stockholders at frequent intervals. If the examination by the Stock List Department indicates the corporation meets minimum requirements of the exchange at the time of the examination, the corporation's application for listing is recommended. The Board of Governors of the New York Stock Exchange finally approves the application and sees that it is made public.
Extra, read all about it.
Now that the Oil Drum Manufacturing Corporation stock is listed, its name is abbreviated for use on the ticker tape. Each time ODM stock or any other stock listed on the exchange is bought or sold, the ticker tape flashes all over the nation the price and number of shares traded. A buyer in Colorado wants to purchase some ODM stock. The buyer's broker in Colorado sees that the last ODM transaction was at $10 a share. The buyer could buy from 1 to 99 shares, which would be known as an odd lot. But a Colorado friend decides to invest in 100 shares, known as a round lot. The Colorado broker wires the order to his New York office. The buy order is telephoned to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It is given to the firm's floor partner, who becomes the representative of the buyer in Colorado. The floor partner goes to the post where ODM stock is traded. The representative of the buyer in Colorado bids $10 a share for 100 shares. But at the moment, there is no stock offered for sale at this price. In the meantime, however, in Maine, an ODM stockholder who needs cash decides to sell his 100 shares if he gets $10 a share. The Maine broker wires the sell order to his firm's representative on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. This firm's floor partner, representing the seller in Maine, offers to sell 100 shares of ODM stock at $10 a share. The price of $10 a share is mutually acceptable and the transaction is made. Like the cowboy in Colorado and the fisherman in Maine, investors all over the country use the facilities of brokers who are members of the New York Stock Exchange whenever they want to buy or sell stock of companies listed on this national market. Yesterday's savings financed the miraculous growth of our railroads, automobiles, airplanes, farm machinery, communications, electric light and power, textiles, and countless other industries contributing to a more enjoyable life. If a part of our savings continue to flow into industry, American labor, management, and capital can continue to build new tools and plants. Industrial expansion creates jobs for hundreds of thousands of young people who must find employment each year. A growing capacity to produce things which make life better in peacetime can be our greatest protection in time of war. When danger threatens, we can convert industry to produce the things we need to defend ourselves. Common stock investments have helped to make our country prosperous and powerful. Owning a share in American industry is like owning a share in the future of our nation. But remember, John Q., there is a risk as well as an advantage in owning any kind of property. So get the facts before you put your money to work.
Wages and prices often play leapfrog. One jumps up, then the other, which means a steady rise in our cost of living. The Dilly Doll Factory is a happy shop. But Joe, our doll painter friend, seems to be a little down in the mouth, which even shows in his work. Joe is pretty discouraged because the high cost of living makes it harder and harder to make ends meet.
Hiya, Joe, old boy.
Hello.
Better look in that envelope.
Wow, a raise! And just in time to buy the kid a birthday present. What'll I get? Let's see. A dress? Bicycle? Roller skates? Shoes? A book? A doll? A doll! What's the price, miss? I work in a factory that makes this doll. $2 is too much.
I'm very sorry, sir, but your company charged us more for this shipment, so we had to raise our selling price.
We got a wage increase, all right, but it couldn't raise the price that much. It just takes a little wood, rubber, paint, cloth, and a phony wig to make that doll. There's only about 10 cents worth of materials in the whole thing. You pirates, crooks, bandits, you robbers!
You're right about the cost of raw materials in that doll, about 10 cents worth. Raw materials in practically everything we buy are worth little until labor transforms them into finished products. For example, how much do you think the raw materials cost in that car?
Oh, about $300.
You've got a surprise coming. It takes 4.5 tons of coal, 2 3/4 tons of iron ore, 50 pounds of cotton, 14 pounds of cured and finished wool, aluminum, zinc, lead, copper, and countless other raw materials to make an automobile. Without the addition of labor costs, these things are worth about $22. The raw materials require the accumulated labor of thousands of people in countless crafts to transform them into a finished automobile. Miners dig the coal and iron ore. Railroad and maritime workers transport these materials to the steel mill, where workers convert the ore into finished steel.
The wages of railroad workers add to the value of steel when it is transported to automobile factories. The cotton that goes into a car accumulates labor cost from the farmer who tills the soil, from workers who sow the seed, and help to raise the cotton. Wages paid to other workers add to the value of the cotton as it is moved from the field to the cotton gin where it is processed. Other workers transport the cotton to the automobile factory. The wool that is used to make a car is worth little while it is still on the sheep. When the labor cost of a sheep shearer is added, the value of the wool is increased by his wages. When all of the parts and materials finally reach the factory for assembly, the labor cost of automobile workers must be added to the price of the car. In the $1,500 automobile, direct and indirect labor costs add up to approximately $1,200, or over 80% of the selling price. That's before taxes. And what happens to the other 20%, or $300? Raw material cost, $22. Profit to producers of raw materials and allied industries, $89. Profit to part manufacturers, $47. Profit to local dealer, $77. Profit to car manufacturer, $65. Now, when you add $400 for taxes, the cost is $1,900 to the buyer. Like the dolls you make, an automobile has a low raw material cost and a high labor cost, and that goes for practically everything we buy.
Oh, yeah? Well, what's the labor cost in a buck's worth of steak?
We'll start back at the farm where Bully Boy was raised. The selling price of meat has to include the labor cost in producing the feed, in building fences, and constructing housing for our animal friend. It takes a lot of costly care to get Bully Boy ready for the market. Wages have to be paid to railroad workers who provide our friend with care and courtesy on his way to the stockyards. Preparing Bully Boy's anatomy for the butcher shop costs money, too. The family butcher figures in his wages every time he sells a thick, juicy steak.
Forgetting taxes for a moment,
the labor cost in a dollar's worth of meat adds up like this. Workers raising beef, 24 cents. Transportation workers, 1/2 cent. Packing house workers, 42 cents. Meat delivery drivers, 1/2 cent. Butcher shop workers, 18 cents. The other 15 cents goes in profits to the retailers, the packers, allied industries, and to the farmers and ranchers. Most of the things we buy accumulate direct and indirect labor costs that add up to 85% of the selling price before taxes are added. Generally speaking, a wage raise means a corresponding rise in prices, unless productivity is increased proportionately.
What do you want, a guy with 4 arms? 4 arms? Say, I got a sensational idea.
To expand productivity, labor and management must work together to develop new ideas and techniques. To expand productivity, capital must finance the creation of more efficient tools and plants. The production of more and better goods at lower costs means that when you get a wage raise, it's a real raise.
A raise. A raise! I want to buy a doll. How much?
Now you've got a real wage raise because you can buy more with what you earn. With increased productivity, wages can keep ahead of prices.
This is the residence of Fred Finchley. He's a family man who enjoys the peace and quiet of his little home. Fred Finchley has a good job.
Freddie, look.
And his family enjoys their standard of living. His salary keeps up with the cost of living, and he owns some of those work-saving appliances we all admire so much. Finchley always checks to make sure he gets his money's worth. But after paying his bills, his savings account, and life insurance premiums, there never seems to be enough money left to pay for that. But there's a time for dreaming and a time for working. So every workday morning, Finchley joins the stream of traffic that flows toward his job. As you can see, Finchley could not be called Victor, but he always gets to work. Right on time.
Hey! Sorry, $60 a month. Have a cigar. Thanks for the good work, Finchley.
Well, gee, thanks, JB, for the cigar and the raise. $60 a month. Hey, can I use it?
Sure you can, Mr. Finchley. But how?
Huh?
Yes, what will you do with those extra dollars? There are lots of things you could do. Bury it in a tin can in the backyard, for instance. But idle money may in time depreciate. Or you could spend it on a couple of nights out a week with the wife. This seems like a lot of fun. But with this kind of life, you'd depreciate. So why not put your money to work?
Put my money to work?
That's right, Mr. Finchley. You can own a share of American business. There are over 1,200 companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Companies which employ more than 11 million people, produce half of all the goods made in America, and pay about half the nation's dividends. Many of these companies have been paying dividends for 25 years or longer.
Tycoon.
Neither are most of the people who own shares in American business. 3 out of 4 of all share owners are in families which make less than $10,000 a year.
The raise was only $60 a month.
Well, the monthly investment plan is specifically designed for anyone who wants to invest in common or preferred stocks on a pay-as-you-go basis. You can $40 up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months under MIP. So why not the member firm of the New York Stock Exchange and get some practical advice on how to own a share in American business? And before you invest, investigate.
Yeah, invest. Just think, with $60 a month, I could...
Just a moment, sir, if you please. You look like the kind of a man of judgment who knows how to invest his money wisely. Won't you step into my office, please? Let me give you a hot tip, strictly confidential. For a limited time only, we are offering to discriminating buyers like yourself a few shares in a world-famous company with mines in Nigeria, Tasmania, Somaliland, and Brooklyn. It's Utopium Unlimited. It glows in the dark. Small investment, big profit. As a special favor, I'll let you have 100 shares for only 40 cents a share. That comes to $40. Plus, of course, $20 for putting you onto a surefire moneymaker. You are now a man of some...
Hey, you!
Mr. Finchley, there is a big difference between dealing with a fly-by-night operator and a reputable broker.
Please sit down, Mr. Finchley. First, tell me, what are you gonna sell me? Not a thing, Mr. Finchley. As members of the New York Stock Exchange, we are prepared to be of service to you if needs. Every day, member brokers buy hundreds of thousands of shares of stock. A doctor in Atlanta wants to buy some stock. A farmer in Spokane wants to sell his stock in the same company to get cash, say, for a new tractor. The Atlanta broker for the buyer and the Spokane broker for the seller speed the orders to their exchange members on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. When the floor broker representing the buyer bids the price asked by the floor broker representing the seller, a transaction is made. When you sell securities on the New York Stock Exchange, you win cash by the buyer. Every day, millions of dollars of listed securities are bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange. You can check the price of your stock in a daily newspaper, or by getting the latest market quotation from a member broker like myself. Well, how do I get the facts before I invest?
Before you'd buy stock in a company, you'd want to know, among other things, its record of sales for previous years, what dividends it has paid, and its prospects for the future. Of course, we can't foretell the future, but we can give you many facts and figures to help you select a suitable stock.
Well, how about this monthly investment plan? Maybe I'd want to invest only about $50 a month.
Well, MIP was set up for people who want to buy stocks on $50 a month can build up quite a little nest egg. Suppose you take a trial run, an imaginary investment route. You might stock selling for $100 a share. Let's say you invest $50 each month in a stock selling for $20 a share.
At this price, your buys almost 2.5 shares the broker's commission. If the price of your stock drops, don't get discouraged, providing you believe the long-range price trend will be upward. Of course, you can sell at any time. You lose on stock that cost you more than $50 a share. In addition, you'll have to pay the broker's commission on the sale. To continue the plan, monthly payment of $50 buys 3 1/2 shares of stock at $15 a share. To $27 a share. If you sell here, you'll have a profit on the shares that cost you less than $27. Your $50 monthly payment buys 1 1/2 shares of stock at the price of $27 a share. Of course, the price of a stock can go down as well as up. But with a long-range monthly investment plan, your $50 a month buys more shares when the price is low, fewer shares when the price is high, to average out the price of all the stock you purchase. You can quit the plan at any time, Mr. Finchley, and take the shares you have purchased. But the idea of the monthly investment plan is to invest every month on a long-range basis in the stock of a company that you think will have good earnings and pay dividends. Take, for example, a company whose stock is selling at $20 a share. If that company, over the past year, paid out $1 a share, the dividend yield comes to 5%. You can keep the cash,
Or if you wish, the dividends can be automatically reinvested for you. Now, the investment route you're traveling is a good one, because the stock has paid satisfactory dividends. And even with its ups and downs, the long-range price trend has been upwards.
Looks pretty good. Thank you. But before I invest, I'm going to study the facts myself.
That's right, Mr. Finchley. All investors should study the facts carefully before they buy any stock. And remember, the monthly investment plan is designed especially for people who want to invest as little as $40 or $50, as well as for those who want to invest up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months. There are many promising investment routes to travel. Many companies whose stocks are listed on the New York Stock Exchange have helped to build our rising standard of living by constantly creating new jobs, services, and products. Therefore, Mr. Finchley and all those who can assume the risk of seeking dividends and profits can put their dollars to work by owning their share of American business through the monthly investment plan.
Joe, the king of the workers of the world.
Hi, folks.
Joe's the king because he can buy more with his wages than any other worker on the globe. Now, what makes it possible for Joe to earn such a good living? He's no smarter than workers in other countries.
Are you kidding?
He's no stronger than workers in other lands.
Oh, yeah? Well, just watch me.
Just because Joe's an American doesn't mean...
Yeah? Well, being an American is the best thing on the... Oh! My back!
Sure, being an American is great, but how could you be superior to any foreigner when you or your folks might be any one of a dozen different races or religions? So, if you're no Superman, it must be the American way of doing things that makes you the luckiest guy in the world.
I don't think I'm so lucky.
You don't? Well, let me show you.
Hey, what's that gadget? Television?
No, it's a time machine. Just pull that lever. You'll see how people worked 100 years ago.
Hey, this I like.
Oh, that's too far back. Try again. We want to stop at 1850.
Who's the character?
That's your grandfather, Joe.
Oh.
He had to work 69 hours a week to earn a living because he had only inexpensive hand tools and his own strength to help him make things. Your grandfather was a powerful man, yet his strength equaled only 1/10 of a horsepower. You have hundreds of horsepower in this costly giant of a machine to multiply your strength and efficiency 1,000 times. This makes it possible for you to earn more than any worker in history. And and still have leisure time each day to enjoy life.
So I'm lucky. But what about the rich guy who does nothing while I do the work?
True, there are rich people who contribute nothing. And there are poor people who contribute the same. But most of the invested capital that buys the tools you use comes from your fellow Americans. 40 million of us have money in the banks. 70 million of us own insurance policies. Over 15 million of us invest savings in corporation stocks and bonds, which help to finance industry. Each year, the people of America invest billions of dollars to create new plants and equipment. This invested capital buys the tools which make a man's labor worth more because he produces more. In China, for example, where there is practically no capital available for investment in plants or tools, a man's labor is not worth very much. A coolie takes 10 days to move 10 gallons of kerosene 100 miles at a freight cost of 10 cents a gallon. An American railroad worker takes only 2 hours to move 100,000 gallons of kerosene 100 miles at a freight cost of 1 cent a gallon. The coolie makes 10 cents a day. An average American railroad worker makes $10 a day, or 100 times more than the coolie. The average railroad worker has the benefit of a $20,000 investment in equipment. The Chinese coolie's equipment is worth only 10 cents. With constant improvement in expensive tools and the skill to use them, the value of any man's labor can be multiplied many times. Naturally, the people in this country who invest their savings with industry expect dividends. No dividends, no investments. Without new capital each year to finance new plants, tools, and equipment, labor and management would soon find themselves in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, without capital to buy new tools, I might not do so good. But look what a new invention did to my grandpa. For 25 years, he knocks his brains out in the wagon works. Then along comes the gas button. Need I tell you what happened to Grandpop?
The history of our country proves that new inventions create thousands of jobs for everyone they displace. So it wasn't long before your grandfather had a better job, had more pay for less work. Our industrial progress is largely the result of the competitive struggle between companies to capture the market to increase profits. Huge sums are spent each year to make a better product to sell for less. Yet, regardless of how much money is spent to develop a new idea, there is often failure. When research proves successful, everyone shares in the accomplishment. The business which fails to give the consumer as much value as a competitor gives often goes bankrupt. However, on a national scale, competition gives the greatest good to the greatest number by continually producing more and better goods at lower prices. The American way of doing things makes it possible for more people to own their own homes. We're only 7% of the world's population, but we have 50% of the radios. We have 54% of the world's telephones. Americans own practically all the refrigerators in existence to give them plenty of ice quickly and easily. Bathtubs, we've got 92% of them. most of us have the leisure time to enjoy the peace and quiet of the beautiful countryside. As we drive about in 72% of the world's automobiles.
I told you to turn at the last corner. You don't even hear me. You waited. I know. I wanted to talk to me.
Under the protection of our freedoms, American labor, management, and capital, the greatest production team in the history of mankind, have made the United States the industrial master of the world. Capital must continue to provide industry with the funds to create new tools and plants. Labor and management must continue to increase the production of better goods at lower prices, so that more people will be able to buy the things that make life easier and happier for all of us. Then Joe will continue to be the king of the workers of the world.
You said it, brother.
A missile named Mac. That's me. The telephone company has asked me to tell you what the people at Bell Telephone Laboratories and the Western Electric Company are doing for our government to guide ballistic missiles like me. You know, we travel at speeds of over 15,000 miles an hour toward targets thousands of miles away. Of course, hitting the target has always been a problem for us missiles. Take my well, let's just call him my oldest ancestor, Rocky. Like all missiles, Rocky had to be aimed and controlled before being fired. Then along came the arrow, which had a bow and string as well as a man to aim and control this miniature missile. Later on, the rifle was developed to guide a bullet. The rifle barrel aimed and controlled the bullet as long as it was in the barrel. But once the bullet left the barrel, the little lead missile was completely on its own. All of us ballistic-type missiles are on our own after we leave the gun barrel stage of aim and control. This rather primitive guidance system had to determine the distance and direction to the target and just how hard to propel the missile. My guidance system has a sort of brain, too. A computer on the ground and radar to keep track of me. This mechanical master of mathematics has to know the exact distance to a target that may be over 6,000 miles away. And to make the job more difficult, the rotation of the Earth keeps the distant target moving. To complicate the problem further, I am traveling at a speed of 300 miles a minute, fast enough to get me from San Francisco to New York in about 10 minutes. Whether or not I hit the target is determined in about the first 5 minutes of flight. That's how long my engines burn. So that's how long I'm under control. That's my gun barrel stage. During this time, I have to be guided in exactly the right direction to reach exactly the right speed at the instant my engine's cut off and my nose cone is released. Because even if I'm aimed right, if I am traveling 1 foot per second too fast or too slow when my engine's cut off, my nose cone will miss the target by a mile. So you see, long before I'm fired, scientists and engineers have figured out exactly what I should do to hit the target and have fed the information into the computer. This information includes distance, effective gravity, my engine power, Earth's rotation, many things. and it's all used in guiding me to my target and controlling my speed. Now, I'm going to let you in on just what is done in those first few critical minutes to make sure my nose cone reaches the target. The computer will communicate with me by radio signals until my engines cut off. Okay, here we go. The computer plays out a series of directions which are radioed to me by a communication link in the radar. At the same time, I send back a radar signal to show just where I am. The part of the communication system I carry along with me might be compared to a robot, which takes action whenever the computer orders a slight turn. The engines are mounted on swivels. When the order comes, they turn me and straighten me out. The engines act as a kind of rudder, steadying me and keeping me on the right path. But what happens if I should get a bit off course? Oh, you remember, I am sending back a steady signal showing just where I am. On the ground, my changing position is sent to the computer many times a second. Watch how the computer gets me back on course. The computer compares everything I do with everything I should be doing. As soon as it discovers the difference, it issues a correcting order. So we have continuous two-way communications many times a second. Orders from the computer are followed by the automatic pilot to keep me right on course. In about 5 minutes, I am aimed and going at just the right speed. The computer tells my engines exactly when to cut off and drop away. There goes my first engine. There goes the second. Now I'm out of the gun barrel stage. My nose cone is on its own for the rest of the journey. This system with the computer on the ground is called command guidance. It's one of the most accurate systems ever invented. While we missiles help the armed forces keep the peace, we also serve as rockets helping the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to put satellites in orbit. Boosting a satellite is much like launching a missile. A satellite is just sent on a different mission, out where nature's laws keep it in orbit. Remember Echo 1, the first satellite used in experimental telephone communications? It was successfully inserted into orbit by the Bell Laboratories Western Electric Guidance System. So were Explorer 10 and 12, launched to measure magnetic fields and the flow of energetic particles in space. So was Tyros, which gathers and relays information about the path of hurricanes and violent storms. And the Bell Systems Telstar, the first active experimental communication satellite, was also put into orbit by the same precise guidance system that guides me. Communications can be many things. A long-distance call, the guidance of a missile, a phone call, or a television program being relayed from a satellite. Hey, there's the moon. I may even be guided up there sometime in the future. But no matter where I'm sent, it's nice to know that this precise guidance system will guide me to my destination.